Erin Patrice, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Always a great time talking to you. We're going to recap the last event in the Including You series. We're talking about empathy and tolerance. Before we do that, just in case folks are watching or listening that aren't familiar with what the Including You series is, give us a quick 101.
Sure. So again, I am Erin Patrice. Phil, thanks for having me here again today. So the Including You series really is talking about how it takes all of us to create the community that we want to see. So oftentimes we do kind of say, this person should do this person should do that. Mm-hmm. And really that includes us. It includes you, right? For us to build our community to what we want it to be. So that's essentially what we'll be talking about and the point of the Including You series.
Tell me a little bit about describe the scene and exactly how you go about doing it. Because I think it's so interesting just from like a community conversation standpoint. So I go walking into the event, what am I going to experience?
So all the senses, right? I mean, we have the sound, we have some taste, we have just everything. I mean, we have live music that's there, which is always fun. I believe, and it kind of sets a precedent that we are here to enjoy ourselves and have a good time, and then dive into some conversation. And really the idea and the way I want people to feel, I don't know if they feel like this or not, but the way I want them to feel is like coming home, right? Mm-hmm. Or going to a gathering, like, a reception at a wedding, just where you're going to have a good time. And during that time of having a good time, you do have some conversation, right? I mean, you think about it, like when you are coming home for a Thanksgiving dinner or for Christmas dinner or whatever, Sunday dinner. There's moments where you may talk about politics. You may talk about, current events. You may talk about how you felt at work. And it's just a very organic conversation. It's not scripted. It's not, and honestly, I don't try to even give a lot of the people at the table the questions ahead of time because I really want people to just talk and really teach us how to navigate through that in that moment, right? And not have to think about it beforehand and really sound really smart and like these experts and all these things. No, we're just regular people talking about everyday things.
I love it. I love how you have each conversation kind of building on each other. Each conversation focuses on like a value or an idea, like empathy and tolerance. What were the previous events talking about?
Sure. So we talked about societal expectations, which all of us deal with, right? And then we talked about bias and judgment, because with those expectations can come the bias and, judging people and things of that nature. But then we talked about empathy and tolerance and what's the difference? Do we tolerate people? Can we learn empathy? Can people be taught empathy, right? And then now we're going to talk about honesty and transparency, because I think that with the previous topics, a lot of times, I mean, we all want to sound like really good people, right?
Yes.
So we want to say, well, of course I don't judge people, right? Uh-huh. Of course I don't have any biases. Yes, I'm super empathetic, when really sometimes we're not. And one thing that I was sad about was that we really didn't get into in the last one, are we able to be empathetic to people we don't like? Right? Or people that have done some really terrible things. I think about...
What are our limits of empathy?
Yes. We talked about how we measure it sometimes, where some people get it, some people don't. But we really didn't get to dive into, yes, you are empathetic, but are you empathetic to people who you don't like? Yes. Right? Or have done some really terrible things.
Because, of course, it's easy to be empathetic to somebody you agree with, because you can say, oh, my goodness, like, I also experienced that. Oh, I think that too. But if somebody's coming at you from a completely different value, a completely different perspective, like, now how empathetic can you be?
Yes. And then think about it. I mean, we also can be empathetic to someone that we don't agree with, but we like. Right? If you have a friend that you all sit on two different sides of the spectrum, maybe about politics, right? You both can say, you know what? I don't agree with you about your politics, but I like you, right? We've been friends for 20 years. We've been, whatever. But the challenge is, are we able to show empathy to people that we don't agree with and we don't like, right? And that's where, like, for me, I really want to ask that question. Is that truly being an empathetic person, right? If we are debating if I can show it to that person because I really don't like that person. Or if a person does something really bad, right? And when I say really bad, I mean like, some kind of criminal activity that you don't agree with.
Yeah. What was really intriguing to me with this conversation about empathy and tolerance, that it really highlighted how you progressively go through topics with each successive event. Because what was really incredible about this one, it was about, we were talking about empathy and tolerance, but then the conversation shifted to bias and judgment, and then it shifted to societal expectations. And well, does society dictate who gets empathy or who we should appreciate? Well, that determines bias. Like, how am I biased in judging people, even though I say that I am not? And then empathy and tolerance is an application of that. And then talking about like honesty, well, that's the next level. Like, we have to honestly talk about when we say, I empathize with you, maybe not in that word, but in how we carry ourselves. Do we actually mean that? Or is it because I'm talking to people and that's going to win me status points, or that's what I think I should say? Or like, do we honestly mean that?
Yeah, because it looks great.
Yes.
To say like, I am super empathetic. I value everyone. I don't tolerate anybody. And it's just not true, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like, I personally do feel like I'm a pretty empathetic person, right? But there are times where it's like, am I tolerating this person or am I showing them true empathy? I have to ask myself that.
Yes.
Right? And then what happens is that for me personally, I will start off kind of tolerating. And then when I ask those questions, I'm like, okay, let me try to understand this person more. Let me try to ask myself more questions, or even ask myself the question of, why is this person bothering me so much?
Mm-hmm.
Where I feel like I have to tolerate them. Is it a me problem? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it just our person, whatever it is? So then that's when empathy can grow, right? But we have to be honest that at some point, sometimes we do tolerate people, right? To get through the day, at work, whatever it is, right? Especially if we don't have those close connections to that person to begin with.
What I think is so fun about these conversations is like looking at the word tolerance. If you think about that word and the context of it in our culture and in society, it's conflated with acceptance.
Yes.
But one of the great points that kind of came out, and I forget one of the panelists kind of brought this up, was, well, the other understanding and really the pervasive understanding of tolerance is like, I'm putting up with you.
Yes.
Like, I don't like you, or I don't like this thing, but I tolerate it. I put up with it. It makes me feel gross or angry or frustrated or whatever, but I tolerate it. And I love like talking about the definitions of words before talking about the words themselves, because that lends such an important angle to this conversation.
Yeah.
In that there's different levels of our interaction with other people. Like,
yes.
Like empathy is a value, absolutely. And we can all say like, we should all be empathetic. Yay. But the clarifying point is, well, are we really empathetic? Are we just putting up with that person and saying, okay, whenever you stop talking, that's going to be great because I'm kind of done talking with you too, and I can leave.
And can you have both? Can you tolerate that person where it's like, oh, this person is really hard to handle, but then also be empathetic towards them, like, wow, because some people are always grumpy. Some people are always, complaining. Some people are, and it's like, oh my goodness, this person is here again. They're complaining again. And you kind of tolerate them in that space, but you also can be empathetic and say, man, how hard can it be, right? To live a life like that where you are constantly angry all the time. Yep. You see nothing positive in anything. And so we didn't really get into that either. And that's the beauty of it, is that, some people kind of come with this idea that there will be this conclusion. Right? And
we have all discovered empathy.
Yes. We solved the mystery, right? And we have come together on that. And there is no conclusion. And that's the beauty of it, is that you just keep talking, right? We are just starting that conversation. And you take it out to the parking lot. You take it out back home. You take it to your
And that always happens with these events, and that's what I love about it. Like, you're always shooing people away. Like, guys, I love this so much, but we only had this space for 2 hours, and you really got to go. I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry. And it's so cute because I need to give a shout out to the Bay Area Community Foundation staff, because especially Rachel, because she usually stays after, and she's so patient and she's so sweet about it. But I see her checking her watch like, okay, guys. No, I'm kidding, Rachel. But it's like, trying to be considerate of her, but I do love it. And I love the fact too, when people are kind of chattering, I don't know what they're saying, right? Mm-hmm. I can't really decipher like what's being said, but you could just hear the buzzing. And that's the energy and the beauty that we hope that we bring to people, is that they want to keep talking about it and working through these things.
Why empathy? Why is it important to have a conversation around empathy and tolerance?
When I first created the series, it was important to me because I felt like we as a society has just we don't have it anymore, right? I mean, I just felt like, when you look at things on social media or in the news or even in our community meetings, right? Where is empathy at? Mm-hmm. And then if we're only tolerating, then let's talk about that. Let's be honest and then figure out why. How do we get past just tolerating people? Nobody wants to just be tolerated. Even the grumpiest person doesn't want to just be tolerated. People want to feel like you accept them, that you love them, that you want them there, even if they don't make it easy, right? Mm-hmm. And so empathy was really big to me, because I felt like we had lost it. We had lost that part of us as humans, right? The idea that, can I understand why this person is like this? Can I understand what this person's going through? And then also just to kind of remind people that we don't know what people are going through. Like literally, people could have just been served divorce papers, or they have a child that has been, I don't know, unruly at school, and they've been dealing with that, right? Mm-hmm. And then they have to come to work and put on this face that we put on, right? When like all hell is happening, breaking loose at our homes or wherever. And so people get announcements that their mom, is terminally ill, or even something as simple as, well, not simple, but, now you have to be the caregiver for a family member or anything. Things happen, right? And so that empathetic piece is so important for us to say, we do not know what people are going through, just like people don't know what's going on with us, right? Mm-hmm. Internally, surrounding us. So just to serve as a reminder, and for us to really ask that question, like, am I just tolerating people, or am I learning empathy, right? Am I exercising empathy?
What do we stand to gain through empathy? I mean, I agree with you in that it's something that we lost, and especially if you consider like politics, we're very much in this feedback loop of you are them. I don't have to listen to you. I don't want to have a conversation with you. I don't want to talk about this. You are absolutely wrong. That comes from both sides of the political spectrum. Why work hard on empathy? What do we stand to gain regaining empathy?
It makes us human, right? It makes us good humans. I mean, it allows us to connect with people on a different level than we would not do, right? I mean, empathy is so important to me anyway, is because I believe that it allows us to see past what people present, right? I mean, because we all present something, right? We all kind of show up, and but empathy allows us to see stuff in a deeper way. And it also reminds us that we want it too. Like, I mean, it's this whole idea that I always say, give what you want to receive. I want people to give me a little grace, and grace comes from being empathetic, right? To be able to say, you know what, I don't know everything that's going on with this person, but I'm going to be empathetic towards them. I'm going to show them some empathy because I don't know, and it also grows, I always say this, emotional intelligence. It allows us to be able to kind of navigate through our own emotions when we understand that, you know what I mean? We understand that people too are trying to navigate through theirs. Yeah.
That's such a great point, because there's a lot of science coming out now about how we form our identities.
Yes.
And the traditional way of thinking, and really the prevailing concept of identity, is like, I am who I am. This is me. This is my person. And the point that they make in the research going on is that that's never true. That you have multiple identities. For instance, the way that you interact with your daughter is different than the way that you interact with your boss as an employee.
Yes.
Those are two different identities contained in one person. And so the idea now is that, yes, we do carry with us our identity, but how did we get those identities to begin with? Through our experiences and interactions with other people.
Yes.
We know ourselves better when we know other people better.
Yes.
And I think that's something that you and I can both agree on, because we do similar work, is that one of the greatest blessings of this is how sitting down and talking to somebody widens, one, your perception and experience of the world, your understanding of other people and their situations and their opinions and their beliefs and their experiences. But one of the greatest benefits is it changes you.
Yes. You grow.
You grow.
Yes. And that is the whole point. I mean, for me, that is my whole point, is to grow in life. Like, if you are sitting and standing in the same space that you've been in for 20 years, that may be something you need to look at within yourself, right? You have to grow. And yes, reaching out to different cultures and experiences helps you become a better person, because now you're more enlightened and you understand, oh, well, that's why. I remember, I'm going to give you an example. I remember my son, he was really one of my sons. I have 4. So one of them, when they were younger, was eating with his hands. And I'll never forget, some of my family kind of, chastised him about eating with his hands. And, that's uncivilized. And so I had to share with this person, because I really truly do break bread with all different kind of people. And in a lot of cultures, people sit down on the ground, have a big bowl, and everybody just goes in with their hands.
Yep.
There's no forks, no knives, no spoons. And I said, well, it's not uncivilized, because there are other people, we just were not taught that way.
Right.
But, somebody decided one day that you can eat chicken with your fingers, but you can't eat, this with your, all these things, right? But that doesn't make it uncivilized. It just means that it's just something different culturally for you. And so helping people understand that different, those different experiences, to me, hopefully enlighten this person to not say that again, right? And to look at things differently and say, oh, and hopefully maybe even research it and look into it like, oh, this is really interesting, because I have friends who are Muslim, right? And when we go places, we sit and we're all share. We literally break the bread, dip it into, everybody dips into the same, sauce, which I'm not always a fan of, just because of my germophobia, but that's a whole nother. The double
that's
dipping.
A problem with you.
Yes, the double dipping.
That's a problem.
I'm joking, but it's just and it's such a beautiful. If you've ever shared space with people from different walks of life, when you eat food together, it is sometimes it's like almost ceremonial.
Yes.
Right? It's not just, it's really beautiful. And so that idea of unfolding things as opposed to molding, right? When I talk to different schools or go places, I always tell people, especially teachers, like to students, right? Our job as educators or community people, whoever, is not to try to mold people. We don't want people to become who we want them to be. Right? We want to take people, and that's part of empathy, taking a person exactly how they are and unfolding, right? What do they have within them that can bring more light to them, to the world, to the community? It's that unfolding part. And that's where different experiences, educating people, sharing information, whatever it is, growing that empathy allows people to unfold and show more of that stuff that's sometimes down in there.
Yeah.
They don't know is in there. But once they tap into different experiences, it kind of reveals itself, right? Not molding, where I want everybody to be a clone of me or somebody else. No.
I'm going to steal that.
No, please do. Please do. Please do.
Yeah, I'm gonna steal that, because it's so great. It's so presumptuous of us, and I can speak from this being a former teacher.
Sure.
It's so presumptuous for us as adults or whoever it is to assume that we know what someone else should be or think or become.
Yes. Like who are we?
Yes. We can have strong convictions about all of those things, but we can loosely hold them enough to say, but also, I might be wrong about some part of this, at least. I might not know the future of what's in store for you or what you may or may not contribute to the world.
And do you not want to just be, right? Yes. Don't you just want to be? Don't you want to feel free to be who you are and then also explore who you are becoming, right? It's this idea of exploring, and you need support with that. No man is an island, as much as we try to act like we are sometimes. We are not an island. So it's like, allow people to be, right? And that comes from that idea that I'm a firm believer, and I say it with such conviction forever, and I'll say it forever, is that we all have gifts. We all have something that we bring to the table. I'm truly a believer of that. Some of them have not been discovered yet, but they're there. We all have something that we're good at. And it's okay for us to say, I'm really good at that, right? I mean, I know we kind of taught that that's like arrogance or whatever, but it's okay for you to say, you know what, this is something that I do well, right? And so when we all are able to do that and given that space, that grace, right, to be able to just be, all that stuff comes out. You realize, oh my goodness, this person has been off in the corner doing this, but they're really good at organizing or whatever it is, right? Let's use them. And that's why a lot of times, and I'm probably going on a rant right now, but this idea that, sometimes you don't have to fire people, right? Sometimes you just have them in the wrong places, right? So it's this idea as a leader to look and say, you are really good at this. I mean, I've had people that, work close with me on my team. It's like, I tried you here. That didn't work. It's okay. It didn't work. That's not your thing, but this is. I noticed you're really good at paying attention to this, or you're really good at interacting with people. So do this for me. Cool. And then that person excels. They feel good about themselves. They're excited to come and work with you. That's the beauty of it, right? So that's probably a tangent. I don't know. I'm all over the place, but I just get really passionate about seeing people, valuing people. And that's where empathy comes from, right? That's the core of it, is saying, you know what, this person deserves to be valued. This person deserves to be seen and heard. How can I help with that?
So if as a culture, we either have lost or are losing our capacity for empathy. Empathy is important because it fills a human need in all of us, and it builds relationships and things like that. How do we then gain empathy? How do we flex this empathy muscle so that I can become a more empathetic person?
First, we have to acknowledge that we don't know everything, that we're not always right. And that's where that intellectual humility comes from, right? Where we're allowed to ask a question and say, wow, let me ask a question about this, right? I know I believe this. And another thing, too, in society right now, we have these extreme isms where it's like all of this or all of that. And that's just not reality, right? There is some gray. A lot of gray. It's
mostly gray.
It's mostly gray, right? And it's like, if you can't acknowledge the fact that it's not all or nothing, this idea that it's all or nothing is just, it boggles my mind. It's so interesting to me. And everything right now seems like that, like you have to be all in on this side or all in on that side, or you are just out, right? And I am very much in this middle area because I try to see things from different perspectives. But back to what you were asking, you asked about why it's important. How do you grow it, right? How do you learn empathy? First, acknowledging that you don't know everything. And I think that is a huge step. It's a big step. A lot of people have a hard time with that, realizing that maybe I'm wrong on this, or maybe we're both right. Because our experiences are different. So, I mean, case in point, I remember I spoke to a gentleman, and I don't know if I shared the story or not before. If I did, chalk it up to my brain. But it's like, we all want safety. I mean, I'm a firm believer that we all want safety. We all want to be healthy. We all want to be loved. Those are core things that we all want. What that looks like is different. So a gentleman I was speaking to, he's a really big gun enthusiast. And, and he says he will never be without guns. And he's one of those people that say, if you want my guns, come get them, right? All of that stuff, right? And so as we talked, I understood, a little bit more of his story, because I asked questions. I'm like, okay, tell me more. Why is that? Did you grow up with guns? And he shared the fact that when he was younger, people broke into his house. Mom and dad were assaulted, but mom is the one that really impacted him, because as a young boy, I have 4 sons, and they've always been very protective over me. And he felt like he had failed his mom, but he was a kid. He couldn't do anything to help her, right? But something, instinctively within him felt like he should have been able to protect her. And he like kind of made this vow within himself at a very young age that he would never feel that way again because it was a horrible feeling.
Wow.
And so he keeps guns in his house. So if somebody ever does that again,
yeah,
he can protect his home. That made sense to me, right? Yep. I was able to show him empathy in that moment. Like, oh, not that I was advocating one or the other, but I wanted to know the question on why are you so extreme about, like, what is it?
Yeah.
And he shared that story, and I was able to then say, oh, that makes sense. So if someone else who believes that you should not have guns, hopefully, if they ever sat down and actually had that conversation, they may still say, I don't want a gun, but I can understand why you do. So both of them, nobody's wrong or right in that moment of understanding, right, and connection.
Yep.
Nobody has to say wrong or right. We could just equally say, I understand your position, right? Somebody else, if you're, walking down the street and held up at gunpoint, somebody robs you, maybe you have a strong disdain for guns, right? Or you look at it and say, I'm going to go get one. So if that ever happens again, you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, so our experiences, and goes back to what we said, our experiences shape us.
Yep.
And so when we judge people based on the end result of
our assumptions of who they are based on what I think.
Yep. Yes. And that one sentence of saying, I like guns. We don't know why. Yep. Or I don't like guns. We don't know why. So yes, I could go on and on about that, but yes.
What you're saying, I think dovetails really well with something Diane Fong said. Diane Mahoney.
Yes.
Of the Bay Area Foundation. She stood up. You do this little Q&A.
Yeah.
Where the audience can ask their questions and make comments and things, which I think is absolutely brilliant. And Diane Mahoney stands up, and I can't quote her accurately, but basically she made the point of, like, we can value empathy and we can say we're empathetic and all of these things, but we can also veer into like this kind of gross moralizing about it. Like, well, I am empathetic
self-righteous,
and you are not, and I am the expert who have attained emotional enlightenment and you are not, you ignorant trolls, and like all of these things. And now that's the complete opposite of empathy. And her point was, to get to empathy, we have to create the space to listen first. And I love that so much because it just breaks everything down away from values, away from concepts, away from ideas, and it just says we need to listen to each other.
Yes.
And then we listen, and then we ask some questions after, so that process of listening can continue.
Yes.
It's not I don't just want to listen to you once and then move on. I want to listen to you deeper.
Yes.
I want to listen to you about
for understanding.
For understanding.
Yes.
I want to make sure that I understand as much as humanly possible where you're coming from first, and then we can meet together and have a fruitful conversation, even if we walk away saying, there's no way that I will ever agree with that person.
Yes,
you
that's okay.
You can walk away fulfilled in a different human way, and I love that about your events, and that you're creating that first preliminary space to just listen to each other. And I'm going to encourage folks, if you're listening to this and you're on a future panel or in your everyday life, whatever it is, it's going to change your life. It's going to change your life, it could possibly change the life of the person that you're listening to. If instead of everybody's reflex of, I think this and I think this and I have this opinion of you and you're wrong, if you just check that reflex and you ask one more question, and then you shut up and listen, and then you listen again and listen.
And if you
again.
have no questions, just listen. Yes, just listen.
I love the phrase "tell me more." Like maybe you're a little freaked out by asking questions. Like I'm an introvert through and through. If you say like, "Can you tell me more about that?" You never have to think about another question again.
Yes.
Tell me more about why you love guns.
Yeah.
Tell me more about why you disagree with this. Tell me more. And man, that's the way forward.
No, it's beautiful.
Speaking of the way forward, give me a quick 60-second preview of our next event.
Yeah, honesty and transparency.
Oh.
And the idea of being honest with ourselves, being honest with others. How do you do that? How are we able to be honest, right? Yep. Without feeling like you may never have that person as a friend again, or even the realization within ourselves, being honest with ourselves and saying, you know what, I really need some work to do. It's okay. It's okay for us to say that, and it's this idea that we feel like we have to be these perfect beings, and we're not. Like we already know we're not perfect. Like it's okay for us to say that. And I think when we go into things like that, it's like, oh my goodness. So yes, honesty and transparency, what it looks like. Why should we be honest? Why are we afraid to be honest with each other? Because right now we have cancel culture, right? We have where people will not invite you to their event anymore if you don't, align with the extremisms, right? And so creating a community, a space where we can be honest with each other and then receive that honesty. Can you receive the honesty? Because I always ask the question, do we really want it? Do we really want honesty, or do we say we want it? Because I don't know, right? But I like what you said about just going back to that really quickly about the listening part. It's so important. When people feel like they're being heard, they will listen, right? People have to feel like you are valuing what they have to say, their experience. People have had real life experiences, and some people will see, for instance, someone with a lot of money, and they don't realize that they grew up poor, right? I know someone very personally that has so much stuff in their basement that I call it mini Walmart. I'm like, what is happening down here? What's going on? And they grew up poor, and they remember not having toilet paper. They remember not having these things. So in their mind, I don't ever want to do that again. So there's a reason why they do. They're just not buying stuff to be buying it. It's a reason. There's always a root to all of this stuff. Yeah. So having those conversations and just listening, coming prepared. When Diane said that, I wanted to plug and say, hey, you can come to the Breaking Bread Village for that, right? Yeah. Because that's the whole point. That is the whole point for us to do away with this idea that we have to solve everything in those 30 minutes. Yep. We're not. Yep. Right? We are humans that are constantly evolving. Right? There's things that you probably believed a year ago that you don't stand by right now. That's a real thing. And so allow us that space to evolve together, right? In a beautiful way. And that comes from having those conversations and listening. If I want to evolve together at the next event, where is it? Where can I buy? Or when is it? Where can I buy tickets? Sure. August 13th, and you can go to our website, tbbv.org. I always try to say it very slow because when I say it fast, it becomes a... And so, yes, August 13th in Bay City, of course, at the Pierre Marquette Depot. And a shout out to them, because they are allowing us to host it there. They sponsor that. They are... so thank you for that. And another shout out to the Bay Area Community Foundation. They have been phenomenal with working with us, doing setup and breakdown and all those things. So... yeah, come on out, August 13th. Beautiful. Tickets are free. Just head there, grab some tickets so we know about how many folks are coming. Yep. Aaron, Patrice, I love the work that you're doing. Looking forward to this event. Thanks so much for the conversation. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate it. You're awesome. Awesome.